Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today's class is dedicated by Dr. Robert Frankel, a dear friend, in the merit of his grandchild, Rami Alexander Ben Ashley, for a complete and speedy recovery, a refuah shleima, and a refuah kroiva, and many, many long, happy, healthy, prosperous years with abundance of health and happiness and joy and all blessings and good spirits and a lot of nachas, a refuah shleima, a refuah kroiva, b'karav mamash. If you didn't open your source sheets yet, like I, then open it right now. And we're going to continue the Maamar of the Baal HaTanya, known as Sheishes Yamim in the Siddur. Yesterday, when was it? Last year, we spoke about why the Zohar calls the Matzah Michla de Emunah, the bread of faith. Okay, here we have it. And we are up to page, let's see. We're up to page Taf Yud Ches. Taf Yud Ches. I'm sorry, not Taf Yud Ches, 834. Page 834. We finished the paragraph, the first paragraph. We're holding the second paragraph on page 834. V'zehu ure'ei Emunah. V'zehu ure'ei Emunah. So let's continue. The Chevra on Zoom, just show me you could see me and hear me. Everything good? Reb Mordechai, you could see and hear?
Can hear you.
You can or you can't? Okay. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. So let's continue. I just want to suggest, if you have time, we had yesterday a class with women. It was really for everybody, but it's called a women's class. And it was titled, Why Do We Have So Much Anxiety at the Seder Night, and How We Can Repair It. It was a very special class. We learned a Maamar, a story about the Baal Shem Tov, and two people who had different types of Seders. I thought it was a very powerful message, very meaningful, and really an incredible story about what the Baal Shem Tov said, why some people know how to enjoy and some people are always stressed. Very interesting. So I think it would be worthwhile. It would be worthwhile, not for judgment, God forbid, but really for awareness. So that was yesterday. You have it on the yeshiva.net. We also had Sunday a very interesting class. It was called a double dip of Jewish history. Shabbos Hagadol Drasha with the Young Israel of Century City. Really very powerful message about Matbilin, why we dip twice. And then we had also a class on Sunday titled, When I Realize I Don't Need Anything, I Can Be Set Free. They're all on theyeshiva.net, and I think you'll appreciate them. We also had a class on dating for boys and young men, which was Sunday night as well, also on the yeshiva.net, which I think you may also enjoy. Okay, those are just some introductory remarks, and now we're going to continue. Today is going to be our last installment of this Maamar. It's a very long Maamar. The Maamar goes on to different aspects, but we're going to conclude the focus, the first major theme of the Maamar, which we've been focusing on. So let's continue inside. V'zehu ure'ei Emunah. V'zehu ure'ei Emunah. This is the meaning of the pasuk in Tehillim. Ure'ei Emunah, like he quoted in the beginning of the Maamar, shemefarnes ha'emunah. Shepherding Emunah. You have to shepherd Emunah, meaning mefarnes Emunah. You have to feed, give parnasa, give sustenance and livelihood to Emunah. What does this mean? It's not that the person necessarily can comprehend, can grasp the essence of the light of infinity. which is Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Anoichi Misha Anoichi, I am who I am, as it is in its ultimate truth. Rak al yidei halbosha de matzah bilvad. Rather, it's only that it's manifested, it's enclosed in the matzah and through the matzah. Dahainu sheyodeya likros abba bilvad. Meaning that the Jew eating matzah has now the know-how to be able to call out Father. There's a certain sense in the child. Obviously, the words, the ability to call out Abba, represents a certain stage in neurological development. It's a certain internal awareness that the child has now in a conscious way, in an organized way, that was not there before. In a primal, unconscious way, a baby, even in the womb, receives a lot of information. Today we know, Chazal speak about the experiences in the womb, in Masechtas Nida, and today we know, how impactful everything is on a child, on the nervous system of the child, things that happen during pregnancy, things that even happen during conception. It seemed in the olden days like a strange thing. You affect a child by affecting a child. But today we know how sensitive it is and how deep the human psyche is, how impressionable it is, how much it absorbs. But those are all impressions that don't happen in a conscious, organized way. The chiddush here is sheyodeya likros abba ve'ima. We spoke about in the previous shir, the Gemara in Brachas Daf Mem, when the baby eats grain, when the baby stops nursing milk and starts eating grain, dagon, something happens. It could start calling out father and mother. This means that there is some development here, an internal development and awareness. Nonetheless, ukamashal hatina kanal, as the metaphor of the child, it's not that the child really gets it, understands what it means you're my father, what it means you're my mother. That's true. Still, the child does get it. Child may not be able to, comprehend the full magnitude of it, the full depth of it. What makes you, all the dynamics, all the reasons for it, all the ramifications. Okay, that takes some time. Sometimes it takes a lot of time till you realize what a tati and a mami are. But nonetheless, there's a certain stage of development that he could recognize Abba. Says the Alter Rebbe, the Jewish people in Mitzrayim are like that tinaik, because Mitzrayim is considered our birth. It's our birth. Like Yecheskel Hanavi says, and we say it in the Haggadah, that God meeting us in Egypt before the redemption was literally like encountering a newborn baby with everything that comes with a newborn baby. Yecheskel is extremely graphic, Ezekiel chapter 16, about what we looked like. And part of it we say in the Haggadah, on the night of Pesach. By the Jewish people eating matzah that night, Ba'erev teichlu matzahs, v'achlu as-habasar b'layla zet tzli eish al matzahs u'merarim yechlu. There was the commandment to eat matzah on the night of Pesach. That eating of the matzah was the tam dagon. It was the taste of grain that allowed the Jew yodeya likros abba. That this Emunah in anoichi misha anoichi. We're not talking here the koyach hapoel benifel, in other words, in recognizing the divine in creation and through creation, which is a universal law, Jew and non-Jew, as explained at length. We're talking here the mohus of Ein Sof, the essence of Ein Sof, which is beyond creation, the anoichi misha anoichi. So you can't say that they grasped it as it is in its pristine truth, but rather the way it's manifested and filtered somewhat through the matzah, like the child. Does the child have the full comprehension and full awareness of what it means, Abba? No, but the child does have a certain experience that this is Abba. And therefore he says, shepherd Emunah. Just like you sustain somebody, you give somebody sustenance, life through Michael, through food. Food is one of the chief ingredients through which we keep somebody alive. We replenish their energy. Just like through the flavor of grain that a tinek, that a child, an infant, tastes. So this is the concept of ure'eh, shepherd. When you shepherd, let's say a shepherd, he shepherds his flock. What does it mean? You're a shepherd. What does a roya do? Roya Yisrael Azina. What does a good roya tzayin do? The most important thing is you have to make sure that your sheep, your goats, your cattle, all the animals that are under your domain are being fed, have what they need, are being nurtured. That's what a shepherd does. We have the story of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's identified in Torah as Moshe Haya Roya. Moshe was a shepherd, as the Medrash says. He was always a shepherd. He was created to be a shepherd. And what was his role? His role was to take care of the flock of Yisrael. And there's the famous story in Medrash Rabbah that when one sheep ran away, Moshe pursued him. And when Moshe pursued him, the sheep ran further and further until Moshe found the sheep and lifted up the sheep on his shoulder. This is what Medrash says, and brought it back and told the sheep, I didn't realize you were thirsty. And he went and he found a brook of water or a stream of water or whatever it was, and he irrigated the sheep. And that's the quintessential model for a shepherd. And that's when Hashem says, if this is how you treat sheep, you could be the one entrusted to be the shepherd of my people. So a roya is the one who makes sure everybody has the parnasa they need, the sustenance they need. A shepherd means you have skin in the game. You take responsibility. It's your responsibility to make sure that all of the flock have what they need. This is called lefarnes oisem, to sustain them, to give them parnasa. They don't need a paycheck every week, but they need to make sure they have their water, they have their protection, they're not scorched from heat, they're not too cold, they have all the food they need. Ure'ei Emunah, you have to shepherd Emunah, you have to feed Emunah. Emunah also needs a starter. Every Jew has this Emunah. As he said, Chelik Havaya Amma, you're Chelik Elikami Mal, and therefore the antenna of a Jew picks up Atzmus Ein Sof. Das ist Ayid. The neshama of a Jew picks up, it absorbs, it detects Atzmus Ein Sof. And it's not satisfied with anything else. Because it senses the truth. But it can be unconscious, or it could be very dormant, or it could not be impactful. It could be very concealed. So the Emunah needs nurturing. The word Emunah means faith, but the word Emunah, it says in Tanya, chapter 42, comes from the word imunim, exercise. Exercise is called imunim, training. La'amen, a coach, a trainer is called ma'amen, right? What does it say in Megillah? Vayhi oimein es Hadassah, he Esther. Over there, it's Mordechai took care. He nurtured Esther. What's this idea of imunim or me'amen? It's the idea of training, of doing it again and again and again. In other words, you can have an amazing skill for dancing. You can have an amazing skill for writing. You can have an amazing skill for being a therapist. You can have an amazing skill as a mathematician, or as a musician, or as a novelist, or as a communicator, or as an athlete. But if you don't practice, if you're not amen yourself, you don't do anything with it. And you know, what do they say? The 10,000 hour rule, right? 10,000 hour rule. So the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, in Perek Membei, chapter 42, that's part of Emunah. Emunah means, it's not just I believe, it's a training, it's a skill that has to be developed. It's there, you have it in you, you're an athlete. You have an antenna to pick up Ein Sof, Atzmus Ein Sof, Atzmus Ein Sof, Anoichi Misha Anoichi. But I have to nurture it, Ure'ei Emunah. The Emunah has to be shepherded. And that's the word, we have in Alter Rebbe, word umnus. What's umnus? Umnus is a trade. In Yiddish, it's called afach. Afach. You say an uman, maisa uman. This is a craftsman's work. Umnus. What makes it a trade? The Gemara has an expression in Shabbos about Rashbi. Daf Yud. Toirosoi nosoi. His Torah is his trade. It's his fach. An umnus means, a shoemaker or a barber or a lawyer, whatever your umnus is. This is what I do every day, again and again and again. I just know it. I know it. Why? Because it's an umnus. It's constant. Toirosoi nosoi means it's constant. So what makes emunah emunah? Emunah is a skill of the soul. It's that skill, it's that aspect of the soul that when cultivated, it allows the soul to perceive and experience ultimate reality. Ultimate reality means the ultimate essence of the Ein Sof. But it needs re'eh emunah. So he says, just like the dagon feeds the child and gives the child the ability to say Abba Ima, this is the matzah. Shagam shahadagon sibel knesses hamoichin de gadlos. Even though the grain becomes a cause, as the Gemara says, that a child experiences a much higher level of awareness called moichin de gadlos, im kol zeh ein belechem imahus hachachma. Nobody's going to say that a physical piece of bread captures the essence of wisdom. But somehow it's enclosed in the bread in a very concealed way. But somehow here there is this ability to be able to give it to the child. Now we'll understand what it means. It doesn't mean that emunah shepherds us. Somebody is a shepherd who sustains emunah. The explanation is Knesses Yisrael nikra as emunah. He said in the beginning of the Maamar that Knesses Yisrael is called Emunah. Why we call Emunah? Because Knesses Yisrael has the moichin, the awareness, the sensitivity to be able to grasp the truth of Ein Sof. But in order to sustain it, in order to feed it, in order to shepherd it, that it should be more powerful, more alive, more vibrant in a person. Why you need a shepherd. Abba, this shepherd is the father, Sheirish Kol HaTzilus, which is also known as Chachma, the source of all of Atzilus, Shezonu Mefarnes, Lahalbish HaMoichin Shalei B'chinas Katnos, who wants that the child should be able to have access to it. So you have to feed the child the dagon that can be eaten by the child. You also can't feed a child too much. Even if you're feeding the child oatmeal or whatever it is from the grain, it has to be the baby food, consistent with the age and the composition and the height and the health of the child. So when you feed something, you feed an animal too much, it won't work. You could choke, or you can overeat, achila gasa. I have to give you the right dosages of food, and it has to be condensed, it has to be contracted, in order for you to be able to get what you need, to get those nutrients. So he says, Abba, the father, feeds the children. He dresses up the moichin, the awareness, the moichin, the gadlos, b'chinas katnos, in a small fashion. And this is like the eating of the matzah. The next side, the next column. 834. This is like the eating of the matzah on the first night of Pesach. And that's why he's called Roya Yisrael, the shepherd of Yisrael. And that's why matzah is called the Michael of Emunah in Zayhar. And this will be enough for somebody who understands. We have to understand Maamar Sheishes Yamim why the pasuk says in Parshas Tzav 6 days you should eat matzah. Why 6? If this is such a powerful idea that the matzah gives the Jewish people this type of awareness, it's mechazik it strengthens it, and yes, it's an oifen of katnos, meaning it's not that the night of Yitzias Mitzrayim they were capable of understanding everything. but it gives you this strength, this chizuk and Emunah. Got it, so why only 6 days? Ha'inyin the yadu, it's known, shemalchus datzilis hanikr mehim nusa, v'chein knesses Yisrael, klulim meyut sfiris. Malchus of Atzilus, which is sometimes called, in Kabbalah, it's called Mehem Nusa, as he brings in the footnotes. And Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish souls, are comprised of 10 spheres, 10 faculties. V'ikir hashvira, misibas hasar shebe'isa hayabemidas bilvat. The main brokenness that comes from the yeast in the dough was in the midas. V'hein shisha midas kiyadua, representing the 6 midas, Chesed Gvura Tiferes Netzach Chayid Yisayid. Lekach Nitztavu Lechel Sheishes Yamim Dafka. That's why the Jews were instructed to eat matzah for 6 days because of the 6 midas. Ubiyir Hadvarim, what does this mean? Hine al derech mashal hanal betinek. If we take the metaphor of a child, sheyedeya likras abal kalpana. When he eats the grain, he knows to call out father, mother. In other words, there's a certain stage in his development that he can appreciate, this is my father, this is my mother, and I'm not going to substitute them for anything else. And I know that there's a special connection here, and there's a special bond, and a special relationship, and it's processed in a very, in a very conscious way. It's still called katnos. He's only a baby. He's 6 months, 1 year, 1 year old, 2 years old, when he's saying Abba v'Imma. But nonetheless, there is an awareness here. Yes, it's a small awareness, it's a primitive awareness, it's a condensed awareness, but it's an awareness. But what will happen here is that his atzmos, his very essence, feels connected and attached and aligned with his father and mother. He's going to walk after his father, go after his father, and call him Abba or mother. In other words, in this healthy development called attachment, there's no attachment disorder, there is attachment, there is connection. This is enough to be able to tell the child, I want to be around these people. I'm walking after my father. I want to be with my father. I want to be with my mother. Of course, you need a father and a mother who are attached, not who are out for lunch, and that this creates all types of issues with attachment avoidance and some other things. A child has to be able to feel this connection. And when the child feels this connection, he's not leaving. V'oz, you know what happens then? Kol midosav hativim yachalafich min hakotzel hakotzim v'nebchinas bitlaza. So in spirituality, in physically, what this means by a child is it affects the growth of all of his emotions, all of his experience. It's interesting, Alter Rebbe should say this, because today this is very big in psychology. All his experiences and emotions are filtered through that attachment. If that attachment is healthy and powerful, and you're talking about a little baby here, it's not, the baby's not a philosopher and he's not a psychologist, but if that baby feels attached, this is Abba, this is Ima, I don't want to leave you. And that's a good sign because I want to be connected to you. And because you want to be connected and you have that connection, then ultimately you can become an independent person. Because you have a solid base. Your base is solid and healthy. So what happens is all my midas are filtered through that attachment. So what is this spiritually? He says, spiritually it means that midas of hativim, my natural dispositions, because of this bittul, this oneness with the Abba, spiritually speaking through the matzah, it affects all of my midas. Even the midas that were affected by the shvira, by the breaking of the vessels. We spoke often about tohu and tikkun. You remember many Maamar that also the Maamar Sheishes Yamim and Lekut Torah that we learned. It's also a Maamar Sheishes Yamim. You have it also in Lekut Torah Pesach. We have it on the website. Over there, it's a lengthy discussion about tohu and tikkun. That there was a shvira, there was a breaking of the vessels in the world of tohu, and as a result of that, the midas become broken, and that's what midas rayas are. Midas rayas doesn't only mean bad midas; they mean broken midas. Midas that don't represent the wholesomeness of a person, because all midas rayas come from brokenness. Ra means broken. In Baba Kama we have kaisel ra'ua, a flimsy broken wall. Any midah Any midah you talk about, midah rois, yeah? Narcissism. What's narcissism? Narcissism represents the brokenness of a person. There's no attachment. I can't trust anybody or anything. Talk about jealousy, talk about hatred, talk about envy, animosity. All of these midas, yeah? Arrogance, the need to be arrogant, the need to get validation from everybody and to be at the center of every conversation. What is that? It's a brokenness. It comes from shvira. Any midara you want to identify, you'll see at the core there's a shvira. I'm not recognizing my attachment. I don't have attachment. I don't have attachment with my core, with my source, and if I don't have attachment with myself, so I'm looking. If you don't have the love that you need, if you never got the love that you need, you substitute it by searching for attention. I need attention. The difference between love and attention, of course, is that attention only lasts while you're getting it. The moment you stop getting attention, it doesn't last anymore, right? If I'm desperately craving attention and I give a wonderful speech and I get a standing ovation for 2 minutes, at that moment, I, so to speak, compensated for the void of love, but right after that, it's all over. That's why many musicians, what happens? They're worshipped by tens of thousands of people, but then they go home and they can't deal with it because the void sets back in, but only with much more intensity. Because there was no real connection, there was no real attachment. That's called shvira. It's amazing ideas here. So what happens here is that the midas that had the shvira, and therefore it results in midas rois, broken midas, yuchlu l'ishapech l'kedusha. But they can all be reoriented and be realigned with kedusha, with wholesomeness. Kamoi ba'ava v'yireh halakis lovad. For example, my love and awe should be directed towards truth, alakus, v'loy lehoi v'leiru zulasa klal v'kadoima. Not to love or fear other things. In other words, he's taking the first two midas, ava and yireh. People are afraid of so many things. I'm afraid of people. I'm afraid of what people are going to say. I'm afraid of how I'm impacting people, what they're going to think of me. Ava, right? This person, all addiction is a form of love. I'm attached to things, but they're all taking me away from what I need. I'm addicted to food. This person is addicted to alcohol. This person is addicted to gambling. Khalila, a person is addicted to certain websites. A person is addicted and has a crush on certain things or certain people, whatever it is, every person. What am I missing? I'm missing the ahava, the real love that I desperately need. The love to truth, the love to elikus, which is my own emes, which is my own pnimius. That's what I'm missing. So this is the moedic idea of Sheishes Yamim Teichel Matzahs. Alter Rebbe says, when the child calls out Abba, Ima, which is a real thing, it's an experience of Abba and Ima, a very deep connection. This is the Noichi Aidei Emunah Hanal Shenimshach B'Achilas Matzah Milmayla Min Hadas Kanal, through the Emunah that comes in through the eating of the matzah. As we said, Emunah comes from beyond Das. You're talking about something that's deeper than Das. The first level of Koyach HaPoel B'Nifel, this is through Das, through understanding the flow of energy that's in the world. Even that has infinite levels. But the second idea, the Anoichi Misha Anoichi, this is beyond Das. And it's there in every Jew. Every Jew be'etzim, just like the child has it. But the Dagon is what allows it to come out, what allows it to be experienced consciously. That's the matzah. And he explained the difference between bread and matzah. Bread, which has sourdough, which has yeast, blows up, that's already the yesh. But matzah represents the ayin, the original, the core, the essence, chachma itself before bina, which is the nekuda of bittel, which is anoichi misha anoichi. It's beyond language, it's beyond definition, beyond descriptions. Once that happens, yes, Sheishes Yamim Teichel Matzahs. This matzah can reinfuse the 6 midas of a person. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chayd Yisai. Chesed is attraction. Gvura is boundaries. Tiferes is empathy. Netzach is victory. Hoid is submission or surrender or acknowledgement or gratitude. Yisoid is bonding, communicativity. These middas which have been affected by a shvira, by the breaking of the vessels in the beginning of creation, as we learned many times, they could now be Sheishes Yamim Teichel Matzahs. 6 days you can eat matzah. Each day represents one of these middas, and you can infuse them with the matzah. Hashem's essence transcends all structure, even the 10 spheres. The Zohar says, the introduction to the Tikkun Zohar, known as Pasach Eliyahu, many people say it Friday before Mincha. So the Zohar says, you are beyond Yud Tzviris. He emanated from himself. He identified with within his infinity 10 characteristics, lachzah, in order to be able to create a perception, an experience in the world of these 10 spheres. So Hashem could shepherd this awareness, which is beyond das, in endless different ways, not only for 6 days. But the recipients can't take it for more than 6 days. So this shefa, this flow from the Ein Sof, is, so to speak, divided, compartmentalized in 6 days. Because in these 6 middas you had the brokenness, to transform brokenness into wholeness, darkness into light, and this is enough for somebody who understands. So to summarize very briefly what we're learning here, at least one of the points, a lot of going on here, but at least one of the points. This was a metaphor that Rabbi Hillel Parasha gave. We learned a Maamar, you remember 2 summers ago, Rabbi Hillel's Maamar about the 3 weeks. He gives there a fabulous metaphor. He says, if I go into a museum and I see an art museum, an art gallery, and I see an extraordinary painting, an extraordinary piece of art, and when I look at it, I may not be an art connoisseur. I may not know how to paint and how to draw. I may never taken classes or lessons about art. But I have some sensitivity. So I look at a certain painting and I'm like, wow. Can I explain what's the wow? Can I explain to you everything that went through the process, that went through the mind of this artist? And I can't. I don't have the information. But I see enough to be able to say, this is something special. This is something unique. And there's an awe there, there's a reverence there. Sometimes you hear something from somebody, you hear somebody communicating. You read something from somebody, you read a book. Even if you may not understand everything, and you may not understand the wisdom of this person completely, but there's enough there to be able to tell me that there's something very special here. But Reb Hillel says, but can you know who the person is on his own without the art? No. All I know about the artist is that he or she is capable of producing such a piece of art. Just like when I read your book. I may be very, very impressed. I may be blown away. But do I know anything about you outside of the book? No. Whatever you chose to communicate in the book, I know about. Whatever you chose to convey through the piece of art or through the piece of music, or an architecture through the blueprints of the home, or a contractor through the actual home, or a sculpture through this actual sculptured item, I know that. I know you through your item. I know you through your book, through your music, through your home, through your piece of art, which is amazing, and you may know a lot. But do I know anything about you? Do I know anything about what type of person you are, your struggles, your vices, your virtues, your inner experiences, your childhood, your development, what makes you tick? Who are you in your essence? It may be that for this artist, actually, painting is one of the most insignificant things in his life. He may have so many other talents that are completely beyond what you ever imagined. You know, you read this book, you finish reading a book, and you feel like you're the best friend of the writer. You know that? You read this thick 1,000-page book, and you think you're his best friend, right? But you never met him. You don't even know what he looks like, unless there's a picture. But you don't know what he looks like. Do you know what type of marriage he has? You know what type of person he is? Do you know what other interests he has outside of writing? For him, the whole writing experience may be a very, very little part of his life. For you, it means everything, because that's my only access to you. But does it really capture his essence? So Reb Hillel gives this metaphor, and he says this is the two levels the Alter Rebbe is talking about here. The first level is koyach hapoel benifel. I recognize Hashem through the painting. Our world is an amazing painting. It's just a piece of magical engineering. Every cell is stupendous, is a stupendous, extraordinary act of infinite engineering and wisdom. You know, if we only had access to one leaf, if we were born on a planet that had only one leaf of a tree, it would be indisputable proof that there's a creator. Because the wisdom, the engineering that goes into one leaf, you could read about this, is so intricate, is so powerful, it's so incredible, that one leaf of one tree would logically prove to me that there's a Borei Olam. Forget about a whole tree. Just one leaf of one tree. One cell. One neuron. One atom. And we're talking about in every tiniest piece of matter, billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of atoms. But just one atom. Just one genetic code in one cell out of 100 trillion cells in the body. So you could learn a tremendous amount. And if you take this seriously, you come to realize that the world is divine energy. But what about the divine do I know? I know about the artist from the painting. But what about the artist himself? That's Anoichi. So you have B'dvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu B'reishis Bar Elikim as Hashemayim V'Saretz. No small feat. Elikim is quite big. But Anoichi Hashem Elokech. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Loi lezois hushpel nefesh Elokis. After all the study of science and physics and geology and cosmology and astrophysics and mathematics and philosophy and psychology and biology, all of that, it's all koyach hapoel benifel. That's a good guy. Loyla zois hushpel nefesh Elokis. The nefesh Elokis is something else. The nefesh Elokis is connected to the essence. The nefesh Elokis senses atzmus ein sof. Atzmus ein sof beyond koyach hapoel benifel. V'aftas Hashem Elokecha, your God. You have an antenna to be able to experience the atzmius of Elokus. The atzmius of Elokus is beyond hishtalshelus, beyond hashpa, beyond hispashtus, beyond giluyah. It's what Alter Rebbe says during the moment of dveikus. What would Alter Rebbe say? That Tzemach Tzedek says he would hear his grandfather in a moment of dveikus. You know what the Tzemach Tzedek says? He would quote a pasuk in Tehillim, Mili b'shamayim v'imcha lo chafatzti ba'aretz. Ich will nicht dein Olam Hase, ich will nicht dein Olam Haba, ich will nicht dein Gan Eden Atachten, ich will nicht dein Gan Eden Elyon, ich will mehr nicht als dich allein. You don't want Olam Haba? Well, everyone is working to get Olam Haba. You don't want Olam Haba? The Alter Rebbe had nothing against Olam Haba. I don't get stuck in Olam Haba. I don't get stuck in anything. Ich will manage das dich allein. I want you. And you is deeper than everything. Because Elam Haza, Elam Haba, Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden Atachten, these are all condensed forms of energy, allowing for the perception of the divine based on the limitations and the chemistry of that soul or that angel of that world. And in each world you have the way the divine is communicated as the engine and the chemistry and the soul of that world, called koyach hapoel benifel. But then there's Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, she'tisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. It's a different experience. That's the Jew. That's the Jew. The Jewish antenna experiences Atzmos Ein Sof. And this is the secret of the Jew. This is the enigma of the Jew. This is the challenge of the Jew. This is the void of the Jew. This is where Yiddishkeit begins. That's why it's the opening of Aseres HaDibros. Asher Yitzei Sichem Me'etz Mitzrayim. Not Anoich Hashem Elokecha Asher Barasi Shamayim V'Aretz. The question is, can I live with this consciously? This is Matzah. The Matzah was the first ability, even as a teenager, as a child coming out of Egypt, where it accesses this food, accesses Abba. Abba means father, Abba means Chachma. That which is L'mayla min Adas, to be able to come into Das, in a way that the child could say Abba Ima, and follow Abba Ima, and not substitute them with anybody else. I don't want anybody else, I want you. Ich will dich allein. What makes you my father? What makes you my mother? I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm sorry. I'm just 1 year old. Don't ask me these philosophical questions. Everything is there. It's there in a way that relates to the child's reality at that moment. That's what happens with eating matzah. Every year a Jew eats matzah. It's not just you're eating a piece of bread, which is a nice ritual. Estelakus. In the matzah, the Rebbeinu Shalom was mamshich. That's why there's so many halachas about matzah. It's like, calm down. It's not a joke. When the matzah is made with this ingredients, Hashem says this matzah has an energy. It's called matzah's mitzvah. And you make a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher qadashanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al achilas matzah. Besides the bracha Monsey lachem and aretz, which is birchas hanenin. Before you eat bread, you make a bracha. Before you eat a vegetable, you make a bracha. That's a general bracha you make on matzah too. But there's a bracha asher qadashanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al achilas matzah. The matzah is a mitzvah. It's a divine connection. It's not just God told me to eat matzah. The matzah itself is something that communicates, infuses a Jew with something. What does it infuse you? It gives a chiyus to this emunah that's stored in the essence of the soul. Sheishes Yamim toichel matzahs. So all my midas, my 6 midas, I can heal from brokenness from that attachment. Attachment with what? Attachment with the core, attachment with the essence. Now, according to this, and this is what I'm going to conclude with, if you remember how the Maamar began, first the Torah says 7 days you should eat matzahs. In Parshas Tzav it says 6 days. So the Gemara says, Davar shaya b'chlal v'yotzim min haklal alamed, lo alamed al atzmi yotzim alamed al haklal kula. It's the whole first shiur at length. That when something was in the klal and it's taken out of the klal, it's here to teach us about the whole klal. So the Alter Rebbe wants to know why the 7th day was the one that was included and then excluded, and then it teaches us about Sheishes Yamim. And very briefly, I'm just going to say this in a few sentences, because this is really the whole second part of the Maamar. The 7th day was Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf represents, like we learned in Torah B'Shalach, Hafach Yam Li'Abasha, that everything that's concealed comes out. Alma de Iskasya becomes Alma de Isgalia. It comes from a place that's deeper than Yam and Yabasha, and therefore it could synthesize both. So Shvi Shal Pesach represents already a deeper state of consciousness, where the Jew experiences Atzmos, Anoichi Misha Anoichi, not only through matzah. Matzah, that's for the child. The child eats dagon, and in the dagon, he gains awareness, or she gains awareness of Abba and Ima. But that's called katnos, b'chinas katnos. It's the way this ultimate reality is condensed and filtered in baby food. Shvi Shal Pesach is already beyond matzah. That's why achilas matzah is reshus. It's voluntary. During the first night of Pesach, when we're just still in Mitzrayim, I have to eat matzah. That's my access to it. After 7 days, Shvi Shal Pesach is Kriyas Yamsuf. Everything that was concealed could be revealed. So even the deepest levels of Atzmos can be fully experienced without restrictions, without filters. It doesn't have to go through the bread. It doesn't have to be melubish b'chinas katnos. It doesn't have to be condensed and filtered and limited and contracted in baby food. Even though the baby food also gives you the access to Abba v'Ima. But nonetheless, it's like a child. 7 days later, there's a full development of it. And therefore, matzah then is rishus. It's voluntary. Oh, that's only the 7th day. But once you hit the 7th day, you could redefine all the 6 days. That you can go back and all the midas can be elevated from the first night into the state of the 7th day, which is beyond matzah, which is rishus. It's beyond matzah. The 6 midas all become a reality, a channel for the absolute infinity of Atzmos Ein Sof, and there is complete oneness in the person. I just wanted to mention that. I know that this is difficult and abstract, but I wanted to mention it because just to give you the continuation of the Maamar, how it all comes full circle. Why the Torah says to eat matzahs for 7 days, and then he excludes the 7th day. And then from that we learn that all the 6 days are voluntary. Because we eat matzahs for 7 days. So you would think you have to eat for 7 days. He says, no, only 6 days. The 7th day, if you want, you can eat matzah. But essentially the 7th day takes you to a place beyond matzah. From there we learn that also the 6 days, the 6 midas, can be redefined through the matzah. That's one aspect which he's going to continue in the second part of the Maamar. Let me take some questions. Question number 1. You explained that matzah is not inflated. There's no bloatedness in matzah. Does that represent the fact that despite perfection of time, place, all this is necessary but insufficient, and we have to possess the humility of matzah and the sincerity of a simple Jew who doesn't have an ego? Yeah, the idea of matzah is humility. And he's explaining in this Maamar what do we mean by humility? Humility here is the concept of chachma, which is before the idea takes shape and develops an ego. In chachma, there's no intellectual ego. Chachma is kayach ma. Rabbi Manis Friedman recently posted a story about a lonely old widower who knew very little about Yiddishkeit. He somehow realized it was Seder night. He took out 3 rice cakes and non-kosher wine and an old Haggadah from his mother. That was his Seder. Rabbi Friedman says, maybe God had a lot of nachas from this sincerity, albeit that halachically it was an improper Seder. Maybe God appreciated this more than the technically correct, routine, lavish Seders of others. Perhaps. We're talking about the fact here that the supernal ruchnius you get only through the matzah. This is why, as philosophers say, it's necessary but insufficient. And the sincerity and emesdikait is important, but you need to eat the matzah. Yeah, listen, I'm sure the Gemara says, Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu mekapeach schar kol beria. Every gesture of a person is significant. The fact that this person wanted to have a Seder, that's amazing. That's very special. The fact that he was eating rice cakes instead of matzah, okay, he did, and the fact that he had non-kosher wine, I mean, I think it's important to say the sincerity is very powerful. The fact that it was non-kosher wine is unfortunate. The fact that he didn't have matzah is unfortunate. There's also something you have to be careful with. I once saw an ad in the New York Times many, many years ago. They were promoting a Seder. Listen to this. Matzah with pork. Okay? So on one hand, you could look at it and say, wow, these are Jews who are eating pork, but they want a Seder. That's true. On the other hand, it's painful because you're having a Seder. In other words, you want to connect to Yiddishkeit, you want to connect to the spirit of Pesach, you want to connect to your parents, you want to connect to your ancestors. But for them, eating pork was something that they wouldn't even entertain. So there's something also sad about that. You understand? Of course, you want to bring out the good and accentuate the good, and Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev would be able to say a lot of beautiful things, and so should we. But you also have to recognize, you also have to recognize the pain in that. That's what you have to recognize. Next question. Okay, I see a very long comment on the yeshiva.net. Everybody could read it on their own. And okay, Chevra. So I'm going to wish you all a beautiful day and a kosher and a freilich in Pesach for you and your loved ones and your families and your communities and all of us and all of the Jewish people. May it really be a powerful, meaningful, real, authentic, internally meaningful Yom Tov. And as we learned yesterday in the Maamar, in the women's class, that the Baal Shem Tov taught that the real Siddur is the one in which a person can really, really go out of their comfort zone and not live in a world of expectations, but really connect to the reality of the moment, and the reality of your children, and the reality of your home, and the reality of yourself. So I bless all of you that we should be able to do this. Send you my love and light. A lichtig in Yom Tov, a freilich in Yom Tov for you and all of our people and the whole world. And as we say in the Haggadah, v'noichal sham min ha'psachim or min ha'zvachim. I'm doing it in that order because of the unique Pesach, because of the unique calendar this year, where Pesach begins Matzah Shabbos, v'noichal sham min ha'psachim or min ha'zvachim, b'karev b'meira b'yameinu, amen. Thank you and have a beautiful Yom Tov.
Thank you.
Today is the birthday of the Rebbe, Yud Aleph Nissan. Today is the Rebbe's birthday, Lubavitcher Rebbe's birthday. Begins 120th year, Kapitel Kuf Chaf. I had a schus last night to go to the Rebbe's Oil in Queens to daven over there. It was quite a big crowd. I don't know, there were like 1,000 or 2,000, I mean, quite a few. It looked like a few thousand people. It was pretty packed. I went late. But I davened there. So I'll just conclude. I'll just conclude with a little vart, a little insight that I once heard from the Rebbe in honor of his Yom Haledes, in honor of his birthday. It's one of the last talks I heard from the Rebbe before he suffered a stroke. It was Parshas Shmois, Tavshin Nun Beis. And I always think about it on Pesach. The Haggadah starts off after Avadim Hayinu, Amar Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Harei ani keben shivim shana v'lo zachisi shetami yitzias Mitzrayim b'leilos ad shedarsha ben zoyma. You remember? Shenemar laman tiska yisem tzeischem eretz Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha hayamim kol yemei chayecha haleilos. Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah says, I'm like 70 years old, and I never knew the reason that we mention Yitzias Mitzrayim at night, but finally Ben Zoyma gave it to me. Ben Zoyma says, the pasuk says, you should remember the day you left Egypt, Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. We could have said, you should remember Yitzias Mitzrayim, Yemei Chayecha. What's Kol Yemei Chayecha? So he says, Yemei Chayecha is the days of your life. Kol Yemei Chayecha is even the nights. Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. You could have said the days of your life. All means even the night. And that's why we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim by day and also by night. We say Krishma in the morning, we speak about Yetzias Mitzrayim in the third section. And at night, again, we speak about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Both by day and by night. Why is it so important to mention both by day and by night? The Rebbe explained as follows. Every person's life has moments of day and moments of night. There's moments that things are bright and beautiful and you have clarity, and there's moments of confusion and uncertainty. The mitzvah of going out of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of going out of Mitzrayim, is both by day and by night. There's no such a thing a person says, I'm too much in a state of darkness to be able to go out of Egypt. There is never a darkness that is so powerful to cause you to be a slave. Even in the thicket, in the midst of darkness, Vayihi b'chatzi halayla, it's in the midst of darkness, you can emancipate yourself. You can choose a path of freedom, a path of awareness. On the other hand, in the middle of the day, Vayihi b'etzem hayom hazeh, things are so bright. He says, it's never a point that you should stop growing and say, oh, I'm done, I'm a liberated person. Even in the middle of the night and in the middle of the day, both extremes. Some people say it's too dark, and some people say everything is perfect, and I get stuck in the Mitzrayim of perfection. Whether the sun is shining brightly or the sun has set, I always have to be able to open myself up to infinity, open myself up to truth. But wait, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, I'm like 70 years old. Why like? Harei ani kibed. So what does the Gemara say in Brachas? Because he was 18 years old. He was a kid. And they wanted to dethrone Reb Gamliel, the way he treated Rabbi Yeshua, and they wanted to appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, but he was too young. And in the morning, he saw some white hair in his beard, and his wife encouraged him, and that's why he says, Harei ani kibed shivim shana. The day he became a Nasi, the day he became the leader of the Jewish people, it looked like he was 70. He wasn't 70, he was 18. He was a teenager. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. This means that this is the first Torah that he taught. The first teaching, or one of the first teachings that he taught, was the source of saying Yetzias Mitzrayim at night. Why was this the first Torah? Harei ani keben shivim shana v'lo zachizi. Why is this the first Torah? And the answer is because this teaches us what a Jewish leader is. The definition of a Jewish leader is to teach Jews how to be able to experience Yetzias Mitzrayim at night. When things are bright and perfect, I can experience Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's not so difficult. I could talk about Geula, but when there's a state of night, and a person could surrender to despair, and you could surrender to sadness, and you could surrender to expectations, and it's not the way it was supposed to be, and it's not the way it should be, and it's not the way I planned it, and I'm confused, and I don't know the future. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, you know what my job as a Nasi is? He said, Nasi from the word hisnasos, to lift people up. Here's the definition of what it means to be a leader, and every person is a leader. You're a leader in your own life, you're a leader in your home, you're a leader in your family life, you're a leader in your community. Every person is a leader. What does it mean to be a leader? To be able to help people experience Yetzias Mitzrayim at night. To be able to know that wherever you are in the world, in any situation, there's no such a thing that you're stuck, but rather you can touch the vibe of liberty and freedom right here, right now, in your present circumstances and in your present reality. It means something different for every person. One person's Mitzrayim is still another person's Geula. In other words, if you're in a deeper place, right, my Geula could still be your Mitzrayim, because you left Mitzrayim yesterday, and today your Geula becomes your Mitzrayim tomorrow. We always have to leave Mitzrayim. So it means something else for every person. But wherever the person is, a Nasi, a mentor, a teacher, a figure, a father, a mother, a parent, a coach, an educator, a teacher, a pedagogue, is here to be able to help me always know that I never have to be stuck in Mitzrayim from the word Mitzarim Gvulim. I can always touch the vibe, the energy of freedom. Wishing you all a beautiful Pesach and a beautiful Yom Tov. Lanu u'lechol Beis Yisrael. Thank you.
Thank you, good Yom Tov. Chag kosher v'sameach.
Same to you. Chag kosher v'sameach. Chag kosher nafrelich Pesach.
Amen, amen.
Amen. You too. Thank you. Everything.